On our 20th anniversary, my wife announced our divorce in front of 50 guests. 24 hours later, I discovered she'd stolen everything. Then I learned about her first husband, the one she never mentioned, the one who disappeared. Her lawyer's face went white when he saw me. That's when I knew I was next. My name is Thomas Bradley, but everyone calls me Tom. I'm 48 years old, and I own a manufacturing business in Ohio that my father started back in the 70s. We make industrial components. Nothing glamorous, but it's honest work, and it's kept our family comfortable for decades. I have 2 kids from my first marriage, Camila, who's 29, and William, who's 27. Their mother, my first wife Linda, passed away 22 years ago from what we thought was a sudden illness. I met Cassie 2 years after Linda died, and she seemed like a miracle. Beautiful, understanding, and most importantly, she said she loved my kids like her own. Cassie told me early on that she couldn't have children, some medical condition she didn't like talking about. I didn't care. I already had 2 amazing kids, and I thought I'd found a woman who would help me raise them and grow old with me. God, was I wrong. The restaurant was packed that night. I'd reserved the whole back section of Bellini's, this upscale Italian place downtown where we'd had our wedding reception. Soft candlelight, white tablecloths, the works. Our closest friends sat around us, glasses of wine already half empty, laughter filling the air. Camila and William were there too, dressed up nice, smiling. I remember thinking how perfect everything looked. I had the small velvet box in my jacket pocket. Inside was a platinum bracelet engraved with our wedding date. I was planning to stand up, make a little speech about how love grows deeper with time, and present it to her. Renew our commitment, you know? 20 years is a milestone worth celebrating. Cassie looked stunning. She always did. Her auburn hair was swept up in some elegant style, and she wore this emerald green dress that caught the light just right. She was smiling, talking to the guests, playing the perfect wife. I watched her from across the table, feeling that familiar warmth in my chest. 20 years, and she still made my heart skip. Then she stood up. She raised her champagne glass high, and the room quieted down. Everyone turned to look at her, expecting some sweet toast about our marriage. I smiled, ready to hear whatever loving words she'd prepared. Instead, she said, "I filed for divorce this morning." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. The room went completely silent. Someone's fork clattered against a plate. I let out a short, confused laugh, because surely this was some kind of joke, right? Some bizarre attempt at humor. But Cassie's face didn't change. Her smile stayed in place, practiced and cold. Her eyes swept across the room, looking at everyone except me. "From now on," she continued, her voice calm and composed like she was discussing the weather, "all communication goes through my lawyer." I heard gasps. Whispers erupted around us. My fingers gripped the edge of the table, so hard my knuckles went white. My whole body felt like it had been dunked in ice water. "Cassie," I managed to say, my voice coming out rough and unsteady. "What the hell are you talking about?" She finally looked at me then. Her expression was detached, like I was a stranger she'd just met. "You heard me, Tom," she said softly. Then she raised her glass higher and said, "To new beginnings." Some guests lifted their glasses awkwardly, uncertain what else to do. Others sat frozen, staring. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, watching, waiting for my reaction. This was supposed to be our celebration, our anniversary. Instead, she turned it into a public execution. I looked down at my hands, still gripping the table. The velvet box in my pocket suddenly felt like a lead weight. I'd been about to ask her to renew our vows, and she'd already signed divorce papers. Cassie took a slow sip of her champagne, set the glass down with a soft click, and walked toward the exit. I sat there, unable to move, unable to breathe, while my entire world collapsed around me. I woke up alone. The bed felt too big, too empty. For a split second, my hand reached across to her side out of habit, expecting to find her warmth. Instead, I found cold sheets. Then reality slammed into me. Last night wasn't a nightmare. It was real. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand and called Cassie. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. By the 4th attempt, I got an automated message. "The number you were trying to reach has been disconnected." Disconnected. Less than 12 hours after she nuked our marriage in front of everyone, she'd cut off all contact. I threw on clothes and went downstairs. The house felt wrong. Everything looked the same: the coffee maker, the photos on the wall, Linda's old piano in the corner that the kids used to play, but it all fell hollow now. I checked the closet in our bedroom. Half of it was empty. Her jewelry box, gone. Her bathroom drawer, cleared out. She'd planned this down to the last detail. My phone buzzed. It was William calling. Dad. His voice came through tight with anger. What the hell happened last night? I sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. I don't know, son. I honestly don't know. She just humiliated you in front of everyone, William said. That wasn't right. That was calculated. He was right. This wasn't some emotional breakdown. This was a strategic strike. I'm going to the bank, I told him. I need to see what's going on. You want me to come with you? He asked. No, I said. Stay with your sister. I'll call you after. I drove to the bank in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel too tight. When I walked up to the counter, the teller gave me a polite smile. Good morning, Mr. Bradley. How can I help you? I need to check my account balance, I said. She typed on her keyboard, then frowned. Typed again. Her expression shifted from confused to uncomfortable. Sir, she said slowly, there's nothing in this account. My stomach dropped. What do you mean nothing? She turned her monitor slightly, so I could see. Zero. The balance showed zero. That's impossible, I said, my voice rising. I had over $200,000 in savings alone. The teller looked genuinely sorry. According to the records, several withdrawals were made yesterday. Large transfers. The account was completely cleared out. Yesterday, the same day she filed for divorce. The same day she stood up and destroyed me in public. Where did the money go? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I'm not authorized to disclose that information, she said quietly. I stepped back from the counter, my mind racing. She'd taken everything. Every cent I'd saved. Every dollar I'd worked for over 2 decades. I pulled out my phone and opened the property records app. I bought our house 15 years ago. Put both our names on the deed. Or so I thought. I scrolled through the documents, and my blood went cold. The house was in her name only. Cassandra Bradley. Sole owner. Why had she done this? How had I not noticed? I stood in the middle of the bank lobby, people walking past me, going about their normal lives while mine collapsed. Cassie hadn't just left me. She'd systematically erased me. My money, my home, everything. This wasn't a divorce. This was a heist. And I had no idea why. I didn't waste time feeling sorry for myself. Cassie wanted to play this through lawyers? Fine. I go straight to the source. Her firm was downtown, one of those sleek glass buildings that screamed money. Parker and Associates. I'd never been there before, never had a reason to. Cassie worked in marketing, or so she told me. Now I wondered what else she'd lied about. I walked through the revolving doors into a lobby that looked more like a hotel than a law office. Marble floors, modern art on the walls, a receptionist sitting behind a desk that probably cost more than my first car. She looked up as I approached, her professional smile firmly in place. Good morning. Do you have an appointment? I need to see my wife's lawyer, I said, keeping my voice level. I'm Thomas Bradley. The smile faltered, just for a second, but I caught it. Her fingers froze over the keyboard, and something flickered across her face. Not just surprise. Something else. Fear. She reached for the phone, her movements suddenly jerky. Mr. Bradley is here, she whispered into the receiver. There was a pause. I heard a muffled voice on the other end, though I couldn't make out the words. The receptionist's eyes darted to me, then away. Yes, sir. I'll send him to the conference room. She hung up and gave me a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. The senior partner will see you shortly. Please follow me. I followed her down a hallway lined with closed office doors. She opened one at the end, gestured me inside, then left without another word. The conference room was massive. Glass table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I stood there, fists clenched at my sides, waiting. The door opened a few minutes later, and a man walked in. Tall, late 50s, expensive suit. He had that polished look lawyers get when they've been doing this too long. But the second he saw me, his expression changed. His face went completely white. I'd seen that look before. Years ago, when one of my factory workers nearly got crushed by a malfunctioning press. That moment when someone realizes they're staring at something dangerous, something that could destroy them. You're Cassandra's husband, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. It's Tom, I said slowly. He gripped the edge of the conference table like he needed something to hold on to. I didn't realize. I didn't know you'd come here. Why wouldn't I? I stepped closer. My wife announces our divorce in front of 50 people, tells me to talk to her lawyer. So here I am, talking. The lawyer's throat worked as he swallowed. Mr. Bradley, maybe we should schedule this for another time, when you've had a chance to. To what? I cut him off. Cool down. Accept that my wife robbed me blind and I should just walk away. I can discuss, he started. Then tell me why you look like you've seen a ghost, I said. Tell me why you went pale the second you saw me, standing here. His jaw clenched. He looked at the door, then back at me. When he spoke, his voice was shaking. Because last time, the husband didn't come back. The room went cold. Every instinct I had started screaming that something was very, very wrong here. What do you mean last time? I asked quietly. He shook his head, taking a step back. I can't. Mr. Bradley, you need to leave. Now. Not until you explain what the hell that means. The lawyer looked like he was about to be sick. There was another man. Before you. And when he came here asking questions. He trailed off. What happened to him? He disappeared, the lawyer said. Just vanished. The lawyer's words hung in the air like poison. Another man. Disappeared. I forced myself to stay calm, even though every nerve in my body was screaming. Who was he? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. The lawyer, whose nameplate I now saw read, Gerald Parker, sank into one of the leather chairs like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. He rubbed his face with both hands. I shouldn't be telling you this, he muttered. But you're going to, I said. It wasn't a question. Parker looked at me for a long moment, then made a decision. He stood up and walked to a cabinet along the wall, unlocked it with a key from his pocket, and pulled out a thick file folder. He set it on the table between us, but didn't open it. Her name wasn't always Cassandra Bradley, he said quietly. Before she married you, she was Cassandra Thornton. My stomach tightened. Thornton. She was married before, to a man named Preston Thornton. He tapped the folder. Wealthy guy. Real estate investments. Commercial properties up and down the East Coast. They were married for 5 years. She told me she'd never been married before. I said, my voice hard. She told you a lot of things that weren't true, Parker replied. Preston Thornton disappeared 21 years ago. No body. No trail. Just gone. The police investigated for a few months. Then the case went cold. 7 years ago. That was right before I met Cassie. My blood ran cold. And you knew about this, I said. Parker's face twisted with something that might have been guilt. I handled some legal work for her after Preston vanished. Property transfers. Estate issues. At the time, I thought she was just a grieving widow trying to move on. But then, he gestured at me. Then you showed up yesterday, and I realized she'd done it again. Done what again? But I already knew. I just needed to hear him say it. Found another target, Parker said bluntly. Preston signed over most of his assets to her in the months before he disappeared. Made her the beneficiary on everything. Life insurance, property deeds, investment accounts. And then he vanished. My hands curled into fists. And now she's doing the same thing to me. The pattern's identical, Parker said. The way she isolated the assets. The timing. Even the public announcement. Preston's family said she humiliated him at a family gathering right before he disappeared. I thought about the anniversary dinner. The way she stood up in front of everyone, coldly destroying me while wearing that perfect smile. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Parker looked away. Because I helped her. I didn't know what I was helping her do, but I still did it. And when Preston vanished, I should have said something. Gone to the police. But I didn't. I told myself it wasn't my business. He met my eyes again. I'm not making that mistake twice. Where's the file on Preston's disappearance? Police have it, but I kept copies of the financial documents. He pushed the folder toward me. Everything's in here. The transfers, the timeline. If you're smart, you'll take this to a lawyer. A real one. Not someone like me. I grabbed the folder and opened it. Pages and pages of documents. Property deeds showing Preston Thornton's name crossed out, replaced by Cassandra Thornton. Bank statements showing massive transfers, all dated within 6 months of his disappearance. There's something else, Parker said quietly. Something I found out later. Cassandra's mother was married 4 times. Every single husband died or disappeared under suspicious circumstances. But nothing was ever proven. The room felt like it was closing in. This wasn't just theft. This was a pattern. A family business. She's done this before, I said. Multiple times. Parker nodded grimly. And if you'd signed those papers she wanted you to sign, if you just quietly accepted the divorce. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I'd be next. Another man who disappeared. Another case that went cold. I need to find Preston Thornton, I said. He's dead, Parker said flatly. I'd bet my career on it. Maybe. But I need proof. Because if I'm going to stop her, I need evidence. I looked at him hard. You're going to help me. I left Parker's office with the file tucked under my arm and my mind racing. Preston Thornton disappeared 7 years ago. Cassie's first husband. The husband she never mentioned. I needed help. Real help. Someone who could navigate this legal nightmare and wasn't afraid to fight dirty when necessary. I called an old friend from the factory, Mike Henderson. He'd been through a brutal divorce 5 years back and came out on top. Mike, I said when he answered. I need the name of your lawyer. Dean Carter, Mike said immediately. Guy's a pit bull. Why, what's going on? I'll explain later. Just send me his number. 2 hours later, I was sitting in Dean Carter's office. The place was nothing like Parker's sterile glass tower. This was a converted warehouse space with exposed brick walls and mismatched furniture. Dean himself looked like he'd just walked off a construction site. Sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. Tom Bradley, he said, shaking my hand with a grip that could bend steel. Mike says you're in trouble. That's putting it mildly. I slid Preston's file across his desk. Dean spent 20 minutes reading through it, his expression getting darker with each page. Finally, he looked up. Your wife's a professional. Professional what? Hunter. She finds men with money, marries them, strips them clean, and moves on. He tapped Preston's photo. This guy probably isn't the first either. And if you hadn't figured it out, you wouldn't be the last. My jaw clenched. Parker said her mother did the same thing. For husbands. All dead or missing. Dean let out a low whistle. Family business. That's a new one. He leaned back in his chair. Here's what we're going to do. First, we freeze whatever assets we can. File an emergency injunction. Second, we dig into Preston Thornton's disappearance. And third, we find out what really happened to your first wife. I went cold. What? Linda died 22 years ago, right? Around the same time Cassie would have been wrapping things up with Preston. Dean's eyes were hard. You said Cassie was a friend of the family back then, that she helped you through Linda's illness. The memory came rushing back. Cassie bringing meals to the house, sitting with Linda when I had to work, being so helpful, so caring. You think Cassie had something to do with Linda's death? I said slowly. I think, Dean said carefully, that we need to request Linda's medical records. Because if Cassie was around when she got sick, and if Linda's symptoms match a certain profile, he trailed off meaningfully. My stomach turned. You're talking about poison. I'm talking about being thorough. Dean pulled out a notepad. Tell me about Linda's last few months. What were her symptoms? I forced myself to remember. Nausea, weakness, fatigue. The doctors thought it was flu that turned into pneumonia. She went downhill fast. Dean wrote something down. And Cassie was there how often? 3, 4 times a week. She'd bring soup, help with the kids. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. I thought she was being kind. She was positioning herself, Dean said bluntly, getting close to the family, making herself indispensable. So when Linda died, you'd turn to her for comfort. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Cassie hadn't fallen in love with me. She'd targeted me, probably watched Preston for years, waiting for the right moment. And when Linda got sick, Cassie saw an opportunity. We need to exhume Linda's body, I said. Dean nodded grimly. We do, but that's going to take time and a court order. In the meantime, we focus on what we can prove. Preston Thornton vanished, and Cassie inherited everything. Now she's trying to do the same to you. What about the kids? I asked. Cassie's been working on them for months, turning them against me. That's part of her pattern, Dean said. Isolate the target. Make sure when he disappears, nobody asks too many questions because everyone thinks he was unstable or abusive. He met my eyes. Has she accused you of anything? Not yet. She will. Probably domestic violence. Emotional abuse. She'll create a narrative where you're the villain and she's the victim. Dean stood up. We need to move fast, before she makes her next move. I drove home in a fog, Dean's words echoing in my head. Linda. Cassie might have killed Linda. The woman I loved, the mother of my children, Might have been murdered by the woman I brought into our home. When I pulled into the driveway, William's truck was already there. He met me at the door, his face pale and drawn. "Dad, we need to talk," he said. Something in his tone made my blood run cold. "What happened?" William looked around like he was checking to see if anyone was listening. "Can we go inside?" "Just us." I led him into my home office and closed the door. William paced for a moment, running his hands through his hair, clearly struggling with something. "Whatever it is," I said gently, "just say it." William stopped pacing and turned to face me. "A few years ago, maybe 3 years back, Cassie." He swallowed hard. "She came onto me." The room tilted. "What?" "I was helping her move some boxes in the garage," William said, his voice tight. "You were at the factory. She started saying things, inappropriate things, about how I was becoming such a strong man, how I reminded her of you when you were younger." He looked sick. Then she touched my shoulder and said if I ever wanted to talk about anything at all, she'd be there for me. My fist clenched. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I thought I was imagining it." William's voice rose. "I thought maybe I misread the situation." She backed off after that, never did it again, so I convinced myself it was nothing. But after what she did at the anniversary dinner, after seeing how cold she was, he met my eyes. "Dad," she was setting something up. I don't know what, but it was deliberate. She was creating leverage. I said, the realization hitting me like a hammer. "If you'd responded, she would have had something to hold over you." Over me. Proof that our family was dysfunctional. William nodded slowly. "And if I hadn't responded, she would have just moved on to plan B." "Has she said anything to Camila?" "I don't know. Camila's been weird lately. Distant. She keeps defending Cassie, saying maybe there's more to the story than we know." William's jaw clenched. "I think Cassie's been in her ear for months." I pulled out my phone and called Camila. It went straight to voicemail. "Camila, it's Dad. I need you to come over. It's important. Please." I hung up and looked at William. "We need to tell her everything. About Preston, about Cassie's mother, about what we suspect happened to your mother." William's face went white. "Mom? What about Mom?" I told him. Every detail Dean had laid out. By the time I finished, William was gripping the edge of my desk, so hard his knuckles had gone white. "She killed Mom," he whispered. "That's why she was always around. That's why she was so helpful. She was poisoning her." "We don't know that for sure yet," I said, though I believed it in my bones. "But we're going to find out." The front door opened and closed. Footsteps in the hallway. Camila appeared in the doorway, her expression guarded. "What's this about?" she asked. William and I exchanged a glance. Then I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Sit down, sweetheart. There's something you need to know about Cassie." Dean called me 3 days later. "We got the court order. Linda's exhumation is scheduled for next week." I was standing in my factory office, watching the production floor through the glass. Everything looked normal down there. Machines running, workers doing their jobs. But my world had been turned upside down. "What are we looking for?" I asked. "Arsenic, thallium, antifreeze compounds. Anything that mimics flu symptoms, but wouldn't show up in a standard autopsy." Dean paused. "Tom, if we find what I think we're going to find, this becomes a murder investigation." "Good," I said coldly. "There's something else." I pulled Cassie's mother's records. For husbands, like you said, 3 died of natural causes. 1 fell down the stairs. But here's the interesting part. The second husband's family requested an autopsy. Found elevated levels of digoxin in his system. That's a heart medication. Right. Small doses are therapeutic. Large doses are fatal. They ruled it accidental overdose. But the family always suspected murder. They just couldn't prove it. My jaw clenched. So Cassie learned from her mother. Looks like it. And here's the really sick part. Cassie has a son. I froze. What? 12-year-old boy. Preston Thornton's kid. She gave birth about a year before Preston disappeared. The boy's been in a private boarding school in Vermont since he was 6. She pays the bills but never visits. The pieces click together with sickening clarity. Cassie had gotten pregnant to lock Preston in, then discarded the child once Preston was gone. Another tool, another manipulation. "We need to use that," I said. "The son proves she was married to Preston. Proves she lied to me. Already on it. I'm filing amended divorce papers today. Fraud, concealment of prior marriage, theft of marital assets. We're going scorched earth." "What about Preston's disappearance?" I've got a private investigator looking into it. Preston owned a cabin in the Adirondacks. Remote location, nobody around for miles. His family says he and Cassie went there for a weekend getaway. Only Cassie came back. We need to search that cabin. The family sold it years ago, but the PI's already contacted the current owners. They're willing to let us look around. Dean's voice hardened. Tom, if Preston's body is there, we've got her. When do we go? Tomorrow. Bring warm clothes. It's going to be cold up in those mountains. I hung up and looked down at the factory floor again. Somewhere out there, Cassie was planning her next move. Probably thinking I'd just roll over, sign whatever paper she sent, and fade away quietly. She had no idea what was coming. The cabin sat at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by pine trees and silence. Dean, the PI, and I stood outside, breath misting in the cold air. The current owners, a retired couple, had given us permission to search, but chose not to come along. Preston's family said he was excited about this trip. Dean said, consulting his notes. Told his brother they were going to work things out. That was the last conversation anyone had with him. The cabin was small, 2 bedrooms, a main living area with a stone fireplace. Dusty furniture covered in sheets. It looked like nobody had been here in years. What are we looking for? I asked. Anything unusual, the PI said. His name was Frank Torres, ex-cop with 30 years on the job. Disturbed earth, hidden spaces, evidence of violence. We split up. Dean and Frank took the bedrooms. I checked the main area. Everything looked normal at first. Old couch, dining table, kitchen with outdated appliances. Then I noticed a fireplace. The stones around it were darker than the others. Stained. I knelt down and ran my fingers along the hearth. Something fell off. Dean, I called. Come look at this. He came over, followed by Frank. Frank pulled out a flashlight and examined the fireplace closely. These stones have been replaced. See how the mortar's newer here than the rest. Why would someone replace stones in a fireplace? Dean asked. Frank and I exchanged a look. We both knew why. We need ground-penetrating radar, Frank said. Check under this floor. How long will that take? I asked. I can have a team here tomorrow morning. I stood up, brushing dust off my knees. Do it. And Dean, call the police. If there's a body under here, this becomes their jurisdiction. Dean nodded grimly. You realize what this means. If we find Preston, Cassie's going down for murder. That's exactly what I'm counting on. We left the cabin and drove back to town. My phone rang around 8 that evening. Unknown number. I answered. Hello. Silence. Then breathing. I know it's you, Cassie, I said. Her voice came through, cold and measured. You're making a mistake, Tom. The only mistake I made was trusting you. Walk away, she said. Take the settlement and walk away. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Or what? I'll end up like Preston. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. You don't understand what you're dealing with, Cassie finally said. Stop digging. Stop now. Here's what I understand. You killed your first husband. You probably killed my wife. And you thought you'd kill me too. My voice was steel, but I'm still here. And I'm not going anywhere. Then you're a fool, she hissed. Maybe, but I'm a fool who's about to destroy you. She hung up. I sat there in the dark, my heart pounding. Cassie was scared. For the first time since this started, she was genuinely afraid. Good. The ground-penetrating radar team arrived at the cabin at dawn. Frank Torres supervised while Dean and I watched from the doorway. The technicians slowly moved the equipment across the floor near the fireplace. After 20 minutes, he stopped. Got something. 3 feet down right here. My stomach tightened. Frank immediately called the state police. Within 2 hours, the cabin was swarming with investigators, forensic teams, and detectives. They cordoned off the area and began carefully excavating. I stood outside with Dean, watching through the windows. The temperature had dropped, and snow was starting to fall. Mr. Bradley? A detective approached us. Mid-40s, gray hair, tired eyes. I'm Detective Sarah Kane. You're the one who called this in. I am, I said. My wife was married to Preston Thornton before me. He disappeared 7 years ago. She never told me about him. Kane's expression darkened. We've been aware of the Thornton case. It's been cold for years. She glanced back at the cabin. If this is him, it changes everything. 3 hours later, they found it. Human remains, wrapped in plastic, buried beneath the fireplace stones. The forensic team worked carefully, documenting everything. Kane came out and pulled us aside. We'll need dental records for confirmation, but based on the clothing and personal effects, I'm confident this is Preston Thornton. Cause of death? Dean asked. Preliminary examination shows blunt force trauma to the skull. This wasn't an accident. This was murder. I felt a cold satisfaction settle over me. My wife killed him. That's what we need to prove. Where's Cassandra Bradley now? I don't know. She's been avoiding me since she filed for divorce. Kane nodded. We're issuing a warrant for her arrest. Murder, concealment of a body, fraud. She's not going anywhere. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I showed it to Kane, who gestured for me to answer and put it on speaker. Hello. Tom. Cassie's voice was tight, strained. We need to meet. Tonight. Why would I meet you? Because if you don't, your children are going to learn some very unfortunate things about their father. Things that might make them question everything they thought they knew. My jaw clenched. She was threatening to frame me, create false evidence, fabricate abuse allegations. The final play in her playbook. Where? I asked. The old steel mill on Route 32. 10 o'clock. Come alone, or I release everything to the media. She hung up. Kane looked at me. That's a setup. She's going to try to kill you. I know, I said, but it's also our chance to catch her in the act. I'll wear a wire. You have units standing by. When she makes her move, you move in. Dean grabbed my arm. Tom, this is insane. Let the police handle it. She's threatening my kids, I said coldly. This ends tonight. Kane studied me for a long moment. All right, but we do this my way. You wear a wire, you wear a vest, and you don't engage her physically. The second she incriminates herself, we move in. Understood. Understood. The old steel mill loomed against the night sky, abandoned for 20 years. Nothing but rusted metal and broken windows. I pulled up at 9:55, my heart pounding. The wire was taped to my chest, the bulletproof vest hidden under my jacket. Somewhere in the darkness, Detective Kane and her team waited. I walked into the main building. Cassie stood in the center, illuminated by moonlight streaming through the broken roof. She looked different, harder. The mask she'd worn for 20 years was gone. You came, she said. You didn't give me much choice. No, I didn't. She circled me slowly, like a predator. You should have just taken the settlement, Tom. Should have walked away, quietly like a good boy. Like Preston did. I kept my voice steady, remembering Kane's instructions. Get her talking. Get her to confess. Cassie smiled coldly. Preston was weak. He figured out what I was doing and thought he could stop me. Thought he could threaten me with lawyers and police. So I invited him to the cabin for a romantic weekend. She laughed, a bitter sound. He actually believed I wanted to reconcile. Idiot. You killed him. I did what I had to do. Hit him with a fireplace poker while he slept. Then buried him under the hearth. Nobody found him for 7 years. She stepped closer. And nobody would have, if you just stayed quiet. What about Linda? My first wife. Cassie's smile widened. Linda was so trusting. Let me bring her soup. Let me help with the medication. She never questioned why she kept getting weaker. Antifreeze mixed into her food. Small doses over 3 months. By the time she died, everyone thought it was natural. Rage burned through me, but I forced it down. You killed her so you could get to me. You were perfect, Cassie said. Successful. Lonely. 2 kids who needed a mother. You were so grateful when I paid attention to you. So easy to manipulate. She pulled something from her pocket. A gun. But then you had to start asking questions. Had to go digging into my past. The police know everything, Cassie. They found Preston's body. They're exhuming Linda. It's over. No, she said, raising the gun. It's over for you. Police. Drop the weapon. Lights flooded the building. Detective Kane and a dozen officers surrounded us, weapons drawn. Cassie spun, gun still in hand, her face twisted with rage. Drop it now. Kane shouted. For a moment, I thought Cassie would fire. Then her shoulders sagged and the gun clattered to the floor. Officers rushed in, tackling her, cuffing her hands behind her back. Kane approached me. You okay? I'm fine. I watched them drag Cassie away, still screaming threats. Is it enough? More than enough. We got every word on tape. Confession to 2 murders. Attempted murder. She's done. 3 months later, I stood in a courtroom and watched Cassie get sentenced. Life in prison without parole for Preston's murder. Another 20 years for Lindis. The judge's words echoed through the room. You showed no remorse, no humanity. You were a danger to society. Cassie's son, Preston Jr., went to live with Preston's brother. The kid deserved a real family, people who would actually love him. William and Camila stood beside me as we left the courthouse. My kids, my real family. The ones Cassie had tried to turn against me. It's really over? Camila asked. It's over, I said. She can't hurt anyone ever again. We drove to Linda's grave. I placed flowers on the headstone, Camila and William on either side of me. I'm sorry, Linda, I whispered. I brought her into our home. I should have protected you. Dad, William said gently. You didn't know. None of us did. He was right. But I'd make sure Linda's memory was honored. I'd make sure her death wasn't forgotten. A year later, I sold the house. Too many bad memories. Started over in a smaller place, closer to the factory. William took over more responsibilities of the business. Camila started her own legal practice, specializing in helping victims of financial fraud. I never remarried. Never even dated. Some scars run too deep. But I was alive. I'd survived. And Cassandra Bradley, the woman who'd killed 2 people and tried to kill me, would spend the rest of her life in a cell. That was justice enough.